Everyone knows by now that Arkham Asylum is an awesome game. I'd even go as far as to say it's one of the best superhero games ever made. Even though I haven't played much superhero games, I'm confident with this statement because Arkham Asylum wasn't just one of the best superhero games I've ever played, it's one of my favourite games ever. So without beating around the bush, let's get on with the review. Arkham Asylum begins with the Joker already captured by Batman. Batman escorts the Joker to Arkham Asylum, and soon enough the Joker escapes and quickly takes control over the asylum with the help of his trusty sidekick, Harley Quinn. Essentially the story revolves around Batman having to restore order to the asylum, defeating all of the villains running free, as well as stopping the Joker from creating his army of superhumans. The story isn't anything to write home about, but it serves as a decent enough excuse for you to be Batman.
Welcome to the madhouse, Batman!
Gameplay consists of exploring, puzzle solving and combat. When exploring, aside from the usual video game mechanics such as jumping, shimmying across ledges and crawling, Batman can use his grappling hook to climb onto ledges. As the game progresses, you'll gradually build up your arsenal of gadgets, starting off with nothing more than your Batarang. Eventually you'll find yourself equipped with explosive gel, which allows you to break down walls, the bat claw, which allows you to tear down vents, the code sequencer, which allows you to hack into locks, and the line launcher, which acts as a zip line. All of the gadgets are easy to use and you'll be able to use them all fluently seconds after obtaining them and quickly recognize which gadgets are required for each situation. Combat will begin with you simply mashing the attack button while occasionally hitting the counter button to avoid enemy punches. Combat is fun and satisfying as hell. Personally, when I played the game for the first time, I had difficulty mastering the combat controls, but it wasn't long before I got to grips with them. As the game progresses, you'll find that combat isn't always as simple as just hitting the attack button and then countering every now and again. In some areas, the enemies will begin to throw items at you that they scavenge from the environment, and in some cases there'll be weapon cases in the room, so you'll have to keep an eye on all of the enemies to make sure no one gets a gun, because if someone does, you're pretty much screwed. Eventually the game will start throwing different types of enemies at you. You've got the knife-wielding maniac and the guy wielding the cattle prods. Each enemy requires you to perform a specific tactic to take them out. While when on their own, they're not a problem, but when they're mixed with a bunch of normal bad guys and you've got a time limit, it can get a little tricky. Sometimes the direct approach isn't the brightest idea, especially when everyone in the room is armed with a gun. Batman can swing from gargoyle statue to gargoyle statue to survey the room. The most basic form of attack during the stealth segments is the silent takedown, in which you simply crawl up behind the enemy and knock them out. As you'd probably guess, performing a silent takedown for the millionth time would get pretty boring, but thankfully the game allows you to use your environment and your gadgets to your advantage. For example, you can blow open walls and ceilings onto enemies, you can hang people from gargoyle statues, use sonic batarangs to lure enemies away from each other, perform glide attacks, ledge takedowns, corner takedowns, and pull people over walkways using your bat claw. There's enough variety in your moves to prevent the stealth sections from getting boring, not to mention the fact the game does throw in some new elements into the stealth sections, such as gargoyle statues being rigged with explosives, and suicide collars to freshen things up a bit.
And remember, if you hear a collar go off, Batman's here.
To encourage exploration and to add replay value are 240 collectibles, which come in the form of Riddler challenges. Throughout the asylum, the Riddler has over 240 things hidden which come in the form of riddles, trophies and interview tapes with the major villains of the game, which are entertaining as hell to listen to. While being well hidden, the collectibles are never hidden so strongly that you'll have to look up a guide on the internet. From the menu you can take a look at the checklist, which tells you how many Riddler challenges you have left to complete in each area of the asylum. Not only that, you can also find maps which pinpoint the whereabouts of every single Riddler challenge.
So, you have given in and taken my map. I hope it proves useful.
This permits you to realistically complete all 240 Riddler challenges without the need for a guide. All in all, the collectibles are enough of a challenge to be worth your time, but aren't hidden too deep to frustrate you. It's the perfect balance. The world of Arkham Asylum is dark and gothic, just like Batman should be. The atmosphere of the franchise is strong thanks to the large amount of typical Batman heroes and villains such as the Joker, Harley Quinn, Riddler, Poison Ivy, Zsasz, Bane and Scarecrow. There's also plenty of subtle references to other villains that you don't get to see up front in the asylum, such as Mr. Freeze, the Mad Hatter and the Ratcatcher. In general, voice acting is awesome. Batman's voice was okay, but the voice of the villains is where the game shines. Mark Hamill does a phenomenal job as the Joker, but the highlight of the voice acting would go to the guy who plays Scarecrow. I'm not sure if it's down to how they distorted his voice, or just down to how badass the guy's voice is. Either way, Scarecrow sounds fucking awesome. Speaking of Scarecrow, his sections are arguably the best part of the game. Every now and again in the game you have an encounter with Scarecrow where you receive a pretty crazy acid trip. In these sections you have to traverse a course without Scarecrow spotting you, using your gadgets to help you on your way. This game is so awesome, even the game over screens are worth talking about. Whenever you die, whatever villain you failed in defeating steps out onto the game over screen to mock you. I ended up killing myself on purpose when faced with each villain just to see what comments they had to offer. As expected, thanks to his kick-ass voice, Scarecrow gets the best game over screen.
See you, Batman. And at the end of fear, oblivion.
Now it's time to discuss the game's weakest aspect, the boss battles. They suck. You wanna know why? Because they're all the same. The first boss battle comes pretty early on when you're faced against your first Titan. Just throw the Batarang, dodge, throw the Batarang, dodge, rinse and repeat until it's dead. Meh, it was kinda fun despite being really simple. But after having to defeat a Titan for the 7th fucking time, can't they just stop? Even Bane himself is just a glorified Titan battle. When you fight a major villain like Harley Quinn, you'll be disappointed to find out you don't actually fight her. She just sends a bunch of bad guys after you, while she sits back and watches. Once you've defeated all of the normal foot soldiers, Batman takes her out in a cutscene. Poison Ivy is probably the only decent boss battle in the game, but even then you mostly just fight normal enemies while fighting her. Once you've completed the main story and have collected all of the collectibles, there's a series of challenge maps to test your combat and stealth skills. There's 16 challenge maps altogether, 8 stealth maps and 8 combat maps. Every map has 3 medals for you to collect. In the combat maps, you simply have to clear the room of bad guys and try to rack up the highest score possible by keeping your combo alive. Each medal is awarded to you by reaching a certain score. In the stealth maps again, you simply have to clear the room of enemies, but if you want the medals, you'll have to take at least one enemy out in one of the 3 specific ways. For example, here in this map I've got to take someone out by pulling them over a ledge. There you go, got the first medal. Getting all 3 medals is really simple on the first few maps, but it does start getting a little tricky. If you're willing to try and get all of the medals on every single map, the maps should keep you occupied for about 3 hours. So that's Batman Arkham Asylum. With the main story being about 7 hours long and the challenge maps being 3 hours, there you go, you got 10 hours of gameplay. But even then you've got the Riddler trophies to collect. Let's just take a random guess and say it'll take you about 4 or 5 hours to collect them all. There's about 15 hours of gameplay altogether, I'd say. So there's Arkham Asylum. Thanks to the fluent combat, badass moves, detective work, stealth segments and awesome gadgets, the game succeeds in doing what most Batman games don't, making you actually feel like Batman. Aside from the weak boss battles and in some cases shitty facial animations, it's a flawless game. Pacing is excellent with the right amount of exploration, combat, puzzles and stealth segments. Shame about the anticlimactic ending though, 8 out of 10.